With us now to discuss the situation further is Canada's former ambassador to Afghanistan, Mr. Chris Alexander. He joins us all the way from Denmark. Sir, welcome to Forum Daily.
Thanks for having me.
Now, some very notable comments here from Mr. Saleh, sir, but let's start with the concerns of Taliban reprisals first. These concerns have been echoed from Canadians and allies left in Afghanistan. So how have they been treated by the Taliban in the past, and should we expect anything different from the Taliban this time?
Well, I think there are two barometers that we need to look at. One is the 5 years when the Taliban was in power from 1996 to 2001, which is remembered as an extremely dark period in Afghan history, especially by Afghan women and girls who lived through that time. Education was illegal for women and girls. Playing music in public was illegal. All kinds of normal cultural practices were repressed. And the country went hurtling backwards towards a level of poverty that was almost beyond what we can measure these days. It was the poorest country in the world in 2001 when the Taliban regime fell. Then there's the record of what the Taliban's agenda has been since then. And it's really just violence. It's violence, the use of force, embracing more and more brutal tactics such as suicide bombing. And the Haqqani group, which championed those practices, is led by a number of brothers, some of whom are now central to this Taliban group that has taken power. One of them is actually responsible for security in Kabul. So it's not surprising to see a suicide attack in these early days of the new Taliban presence in Afghanistan's capital.
And Mr. Saleh is saying Afghanistan will not become Talibanistan, but at the same time, the Taliban has indicated that it wants to be treated as a legitimate government. So is this a genuine statement, sir? And can we reasonably expect a reformed Taliban government?
Well, their agenda ever since they were created in the early 1990s by neighboring Pakistan has been recognition. They sought that when they were in power in Kabul last time. They were only recognized eventually by 3 states. They were shunned by almost the entire international community. And their tactic in recent years, especially in these Doha negotiations, has been to achieve recognition through negotiation, through holding out the promise of power sharing. Obviously, that's not going to happen because they have refused power sharing and decided instead to impose a military solution on Afghans, which is the last thing that Afghans have wanted or needed or deserved. And so where are we going on that track? I think towards isolation of the Taliban, continuing support for the Afghan people, which will have to focus on their humanitarian needs, and then a much larger reckoning with Pakistan, which is the Taliban's creator and sponsor, and which hasn't been sanctioned to date for this state sponsorship of terrorism. I think there's a reckoning ahead on that front.
All right, sir, just over a minute left here, but digging deeper into Mr. Saleh's address, where he addressed Canadians specifically. If our viewers are interested, you could visit the Macdonald-Laurier Institute website to look at this statement. But Mr. Alexander, what are the main points of his message here?
Well, first, he acknowledges Canada. We played a very central role in supporting the government he was part of. He is the elected vice president. He and Ashraf Ghani were chosen in a very difficult election because of Taliban violence. But he is speaking for the Afghans that benefited from international cooperation for 20 years. Secondly, he's saying the darkness doesn't have to engulf everyone. Afghans do not want this group that is now occupying the country to hold power for long. And that if they get the right forms of support and we adopt the right policies for the region, which have to involve a change of policy towards Pakistan, there can be a bright future ahead. We shouldn't give up on Afghanistan and abandon the region. That would be a mistake. And we shouldn't embrace these thugs who are listed terrorists who've taken power in Kabul.
All right, Mr. Alexander, we truly appreciate your time joining us all the way from Denmark today. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me.